Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back. This is Austin Linney with Construct Your Life podcast. Happy to be here. We have a special guest today, Evan Hollidays here. How you doing, Evan?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
I appreciate it, man. I really look up to this guy. Y'all are going to hear a great podcast today. Really, there's so much to talk about. I really just want to jump in there. Why don't you tell, you're a developer, you have Airbnbs, you have multifamilies, you're a coach. There's so many things that you do. It's really a jack of all trades. But you've had some changes come up, and why don't you take listeners through where you started college, how you have this kind of this passion so much for this investing.
Yeah, so I love to kind of give people a background of when I started in college. That was kind of the turning point for me of kind of realizing my passion and realizing my purpose and kind of where I was headed. And I was on the pre-med route from a very early age. I had a bad surgery growing up, or not a bad surgery, but a bad injury and a surgery. And because of that, I was on the pre-med route, and I was like, man, science and chemistry just are not for me. Like, this is not my jam at all. And I saw this development going in on campus. I went to University of Louisville, and I saw this development. I was like, man, I don't know what about it, but I love it. I love that, like, you can build something out of nothing. You can totally transform a neighborhood. I was like, I got to figure out who the owner is, who the developer is, and learn everything I can about that and try to get involved in that. So in a roundabout way, basically, one of my mentors in college, I mentioned to him that excited me. And he's like, really? It's like, I know the owner developer. He's one of my good friends. No, like, yeah, let me introduce you. And from that introduction, I basically impressed the owner. I got a bunch of people to come to his groundbreaking. And from that, I was able to basically be the first one hired and learned, like, he started me out, like, doing everything. Like, I was picking up trash. I was making, like, relationships with potential retailers that we were going to lease space to. We leased up the entire space. We managed it. Learned all about property management. And I realized, I was like, I don't want to do property management. I want to do what that guy's doing. I want to do what the owner developer's doing. And that's like what gets me pumped up and excited. So from there, myself and 4 others, we started a modular development company, which basically, like, we're building it in a warehouse and then shipping it to the site to be fabricated and put together on site. So we actually used houseboat manufacturing plants in Kentucky. They'd laid off 1,100 skilled workers, and we're like, how can we put those guys back to work and use those same facilities, use the same layout even as a houseboat, but instead of putting it on water, we're putting it on a foundation and building a house. So we started out doing single family, and then we're like, well, how can we really scale this and make massive change? And also, we were mission driven in that we're like, you know what, we could do more than just create housing. We could create housing for families that can't normally afford good quality housing. And so that for me was always part of, like, a big part of what I was doing. I was like, I want to, like, not just build housing for the rich and people that can afford anything. I want to build housing for people that can't afford very many options. And we're giving them a brand new option that they would never be able to afford otherwise. Because housing is such a foundational part of basically childhood, growing up, education, healthcare. Like, it just has, like, these massive effects on families and even economies and communities. And so that's what got me excited. So we built this modular company to build out both mixed income housing. We're basically mixing families making 20 to 30,000 with those making 100,000. And from there, we were trying to scale it to multifamily and do urban developments. And that's when we found a development partner. And basically they're like, hey, let's figure out something where we can work together. What's that?
How old are you at this point?
I was just coming out of college, so I think I was 22.
Bro, I was in bars drinking. This is what blows me away about you. And I want to ask you, because I've never asked you, and I want to stop here for just a minute on affordable housing side, because we'll get into that more later. But if you meet developers and you meet real estate investors, they want the sexy stuff. They want, the sleek townhomes, the modern developments, the 300-unit apartment complex. Was it your parents? Was it how you were raised? I'm trying to understand what got you in the affordable housing side.
Yeah, that's a good question. There was nothing like directly related to affordable housing that got me there. I think the biggest thing, though, and you touched on it already, is my parents and my upbringing. My parents were literally like, I don't know, I was blessed with amazing parents. I think anybody that has awesome role models and somebody that believes in them at a young age, literally that's what gives you a lot of your confidence growing up and into your adult years. So I was blessed to have amazing parents that believed in me and really also like taught me that the value of like caring for others and how we're all just humans. And, if you just give out love to other people, then you'll get love back. And that's really what people need the most, if of anything, is just love from other people. And if we all came from that mindset, then this world would be a whole lot better place. And I think we're kind of seeing that now of like, people are like, hey, we're all in this weird predicament with coronavirus right now, and we have to go through it together. So let's enjoy it together. And so I think going back to my childhood, like that's kind of what it was, like just them sharing that ability to love and share that with other people, I think got me thinking about how I can actually do good with my work and help other people in the process.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So developer partner, we're going to scale to multifamily right out of college. And then what happened next?
Yeah. And then, so I basically was looking for a co-development partner, and I found a great group, and they're like, well, how about you come work with us, learn from us, work side by side with us. And so I did that for 6 years. And in the process of working there, it basically grew into the largest affordable development company in the country. And I really it was a blessing of an experience because I got to work alongside these guys that combined had over 100 years of real estate development experience, got to do all kinds of deals, got to work with city leaders, and over that process sourced and developed and led a team that did over 1,300 units of workforce and affordable housing across the Southeast. So that was a phenomenal experience for me. But then this last year, I was like, hey, I have a dream and a passion and a mission that's way bigger than where I am now. Mm-hmm. And so we ultimately made the decision to start our own company, Holiday Ventures. And that alongside our podcast, Monumental, has been kind of the foundation of growth that we're trying to like elevate this platform of, helping others through workforce affordable housing and giving people the opportunity to actually have a place that they can be proud of and afford to live in, as being that foundation of their family.
Mm-hmm. And, that's not an easy decision for a lot of people because, the responsibility from being an employee and just executing on projects is a lot different than bringing on people, hiring people, handling the brunt of the financials yourself. So what do you think that you were basically building a mindset in order to take on something like that? And then how did you get there to walk away from a well-paying job to kind of go a road that you don't really know if it's going to be successful or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think ultimately that's what it is if your listeners are thinking about that or have thought about how do I make that jump from W-2 to, self-employed or entrepreneur, I think it's something where you do it in steps, right? Like it didn't just happen overnight where I was like, all right, tomorrow I'm going to leave. It was a series of steps that I was making, preparing myself both mentally and from a standpoint of like finances, mentors. I was lining up deals. I was basically lining up everything to get my company going before I even left, because I knew I was like, I don't want to start day one, like setting up my LLC after I've left. Like I want to have all that stuff done. I want to have this momentum built up so that when I leave, I don't miss a beat. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that like throughout that whole process, I realized I was like, having a coach in my corner was huge. Basically setting a date for when I was going to leave was huge. Having experience from other deals and having that confidence and believing in myself was huge. And then basically lining up capital partners and deals already in the pipeline before I left. Those were all things that basically, for me to feel most comfortable to leave, those were the steps that I took to get me there, where I had the confidence to say, okay, today's the day. I'm telling them, I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I think it ended up being 1 week, but that's what happened. Like that that was like over 12 months where I put in those steps. So I think that's for anybody listening, like just map out why you want to leave, when you want to leave, how you want to leave, and what you're going to do, what steps you're going to take to make that happen. And just always think about the next logical step.
And I think at the end of the day, if I can kind of put in the same context as the way I think, regardless of if it fails or nothing, at least when you're older, you don't have to go with what if, right? And I think that people have to understand that, in order to get somewhere, you're going to have to take that step eventually. You're going to have to leap out there, and you're lucky enough to have a great fiance who supports you, who I think is the backbone of the company.
She is.
So that's great. And, kind of talk about what you've seen, because I was actually there when you made the switch in Nashville. It's been about 6-8 months. Talk about what you've seen so far, things that were easier than you thought and things that were way harder than you thought, and kind of go through, what they can expect when they take that leap.
So the number one thing I noticed when I was really had told the company, and I was basically telling all the partners that I had worked with at the previous company, just letting them know, say, hey, I really enjoyed working with you. I'd love to keep working with you, but under a new name. And so that those were new conversations I'd never had before. But I noticed, I was like, every single person I talked to said, hey, Evan, we love working with you. We trust you, like you. We know you. We know you do what you say you're going to do. And that, I think, is more important than who you're working for, 100%. So if you are one of the people that does what they say they're going to do, that puts in 200% every day, puts in the effort, puts in the work, does whatever it takes, people recognize that. And especially if you do that over time, because a lot of the people I talked to, there was a little bit of concern there. Because I was like, hey, I'm leaving the biggest affordable developer in the country. How are people going to react when I'm saying, hey, it's just me right now? I'm going to build out my team, but it's just me right now. And so that was an interesting transition. But I was like overwhelmingly surprised by people that were like, hey, now that you're on your own, hey, I have capital. Hey, I have a deal. Hey, let's partner. Hey, like I'll, even help you, give you services for free because I know you're getting started. Like that happened to me time and time again. I made like 100 calls when I left, and literally just about everybody said something like that. Like, hey, we would love to keep working with you. And also here's how we can help you on your journey to transitioning. So I think it comes down to like you're laying that foundation years in advance. Like it wasn't like that was the last 6 months. It was like that was years of work. I worked my ass off at that company, and it transitioned over to making my launch into my own company a lot easier. And then I think also it's putting out into the universe what you are all about and your energy, and then it comes back to you tenfold. Because I put it out there. I said, hey guys, like I'm doing my own thing. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm passionate about it. I have a big, big mission to help a lot of people. And everybody's like, yeah, I can get behind that. Like I get excited about that. And because of that, I've literally got deals from people that had never brought me a deal before at my previous company. They're like, hey, now that you're on your own, here's a deal. Let's work together. It's amazing how that happens. So I think you just have to put yourself out there to have that come back to you.
And I'll, a book that you recommended, and I know Brandon Turner recommended, Vision. I read it, and you had a clear vision, and you were able to articulate that to people. And what people don't understand, and I think it's, something I talked about yesterday with Tyler, like I think momentum and energy and vision are the secret weapons to real estate that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
And energy gets you in the room, the vision paints the picture for everybody. And then when you get momentum in deals, that'll take you to the next level, right? And just so the listeners know, I'm surprised I'm interviewing this guy in his house. He goes to all the conferences, you're at all the events, you're networking constantly. So, talk about how you feel relationships. This is not something that you build in 3 months. This has been 7 years, 8 years. Talk about what you feel like relationships have done for you when you're asking somebody for $18 million. They need to know that they can trust the person that they're giving that money to.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, honestly, I think real estate more than anything, like it's a relationship business first. And just imagine like you going into a room with no introduction and asking for capital or asking for investments or asking for $18 million, like you said. Or imagine going into that room and not knowing the people, but you knowing their best friend or you knowing their trusted business partner and them saying how much they enjoyed working with you, how much they love you as a person and how great you are to work with and how you do what you say you're going to do. The difference between those two is like night and day. Mm-hmm. So that is the power of relationships, is that it speeds up your business. It turns decades into days. Mm-hmm. Where like I went into a new market and, you figure out, hey, I have this relationship from Nashville, but we're going to start looking in Chattanooga, ask him, say, hey, who do you know in this market? Who should we talk to? Mm-hmm. He tells you somebody, and then you talk to him. You use that relationship to get into 10 different doors. And then all of a sudden, you're talking to the leadership of the city in a matter of weeks. So it's just like that progression can happen so much more quickly if you're constantly like building relationships, talking to people, like figuring out what people need, helping them, doing what you say you're going to do. I think it's a compound effect. Like it literally powers real estate. If you're going to make it far in this business, you have to be intentional building relationships.
I agree 100%. I work on it a little bit.
Austin's the king of relationship building.
And so I think the thing that I've always wanted to ask you that I haven't asked you, even though we talk a lot, the path that you've chosen to take, it's not that you don't do new construction development. It's not that you're not going to do that. It's not that you don't have Airbnbs. It's not that you don't have a 10-plex. But the amount of patience that it takes to do a deal like you do that could last 2 to 4 to 5 years, how do you get your mind around that? Is the mission, is the why just so much greater that really, I would imagine in the middle of a deal like that, it feels like it was only 6 months, maybe, or maybe it feels like it's forever too. But I mean, is the mission so great? Is the why so big that it doesn't take the time?
I think it's a combination of things. It's if you think about like every day is a new challenge, and it takes a lot of patience. I learned that very quickly when I worked on my first big development. It took me 2 years just to get the financing and the permits to start construction. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, man, I'm raring to go. Like, I'm going to close this thing in like 6 months. I'm going to show everybody how great I am, and I'm going to get this thing done in no time. And then I was like, whoa, 2 years later, like that ultimately, like it took a little hit to my ego. It took a hit to my confidence. But you just have to remind yourself, and that taught me a valuable lesson, is like, you just have to remind yourself like 1% every day. And then all of a sudden at the end, you're going to have this like monumental shift where it goes from pre-construction and, no money to all of a sudden you have a $35 million project. So it's like you put in 2 to 3 years worth of work, and then in one day, granted, you're putting in that work every day, but in that one day, everything shifts. But it doesn't happen overnight. It happens with that 1% every day.
I help a lot of young kids in the business, and something they don't, something that I'm trying to impart on them is like, especially when you're just getting started, like I can't put enough emphasis on small wins.
Yeah.
And especially when you're new to investing, like guys, when you're talking about your goals, you're talking about things that you want to accomplish, like write out a 5-year vision, but create goals within 30 to 90 to 60 days that you can hit, that gives you the confidence to layer on confidence to continue.
Yeah.
Evan didn't come out of the gate, doing new ground construction, 300 units. Like, I'm sure there was some small wins in there,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I still to this day like have to remind myself, like, don't get distracted by shiny objects. Don't get distracted by other things that seem like they have a quicker horizon. It's like, stick to your path, and also know that you're exactly right. Like, look at 90-day quarters and say, hey, for the next 90 days, what are my rocks? What are my objectives that I need to get done? And then set like a weekly goal to get you a little bit closer, so that in 90 days you can actually say, hey, I got this win. Like for us right now, we're working on a pilot, which is a tax abatement for a project. And so we just had basically had a meeting over Zoom, because we couldn't do it in person. But that meeting was something where I prepared for the last 2 weeks ahead of this meeting, did this presentation, got the city officials on board. Mm-hmm. And now the next step is to get the pilot approval. But that meeting, like just preparing for that, took weeks. Mm-hmm. And then we had the meeting. And then now that's just the first in a series of more meetings. Mm-hmm. But the value that you unlock from that series of meetings is tremendous. Think about, like, we're putting in two plus years worth of pre-development work, but at the end of the day, we get to create a $40+ million project. So it's just thinking about reminding yourself, like, you are paid commensurate to the size of the problem that you solve. And so we're solving big problems. We're creating something out of nothing. Like, we're basically turning a pile of dirt into 240 units. And we're doing it for families that wouldn't normally be able to pay for that, wouldn't be able to afford that. So that's a big problem. And so, we're basically able to make that impact and be paid commensurate for that problem that we're solving.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to make sure that the listeners get the most value they can. So, what I got chills when I walked a couple of your properties and you kind of told me what y'all were thinking about doing, that weekend really shifted me. When you're walking a ground of dirt that's going to be 300 units, you can see it and you can vision it, and that kind of like, it makes single family investing feel like nothing. But kind of walk the listeners through, like, what is affordable housing, what you're looking to do, and what really is the true reason you're doing it, the impact on the back end that you're offering to America. I mean, really America, really.
Yeah. So in summary, affordable housing is more or less, and I should get better at this, but I'm trying to change the image of affordable housing as well, because it has such a negative connotation. But really, it's just housing that people can afford. That's the point. It's for working class families making, typically the housing that we provide is for families making $30,000 to $70,000 a year, and we're providing brand new housing, quality housing, and a stable place for them to call home that they can be proud of. And we're basically doing that. We're financing it through public-private partnerships, working with cities, working with counties, working with states, and even federal governments to make this happen, because the governments have seen that this housing is in providing for those that are like kind of like the backbone of the community, the teachers, the firefighters, the retailers, the admin in the office, like all these people that work to create our economy and what it is today. And it's booming, was booming. They need this housing, and they need it in the markets where they're working. And they're constantly being priced out right now because there's just this massive, massive influx of people. And we're not basically building enough housing to match the amount of people that want to live in cities. And so that it obviously, supply and demand, it just drives up the price. So we're coming in and saying, hey, if the government can help us pay for it, we can lower our prices and our rent. And in so doing, we're basically having this like ripple effect on the economy by making it so that our residents aren't spending like 60, 70% of their paycheck on their rent. They're able to only spend like 30% of their paycheck on their rent, and they're able to spend the rest on education, healthcare, food, whatever it is to like help their family. And then on top of that, like we're trying to take it a step further and say, how can we actually not just provide the housing, but take it a step further and say, let's empower our residents. Let's get them to a point where they're learning, they're educating, they're learning about mindset, they're learning about like personal development, they're learning about how to gain the confidence, like we talked about earlier. Like we want to almost put the tools, like podcasts, for example, like we want to give them tools, give them access to that information, that powerful information that can be transformative for their life and the lives of their children, and get them so they don't need affordable housing, so they can go buy their own home, so they can build equity in real estate, whatever it is. Like we want to help them take that next step up the economic ladder and help them with social mobility. So that's really the goal behind it, is we want to make residential empowerment a big, big piece of what we do with Holiday Ventures.
Mm-hmm. And that was, guys, that's the piece that really got me. You know, as we sit here, 325 in March, everybody knows what's going on outside there with the coronavirus and the economy. And, you know, I wrote to him yesterday. I think what he's doing right now for the next 20 to 50 years is probably more important than ever, as we look at what happened to the economy so quickly and people losing their jobs on a daily basis right now. And, you know, just so people know, these affordable housing are Market A apartments. This is not a bad place to live. This is a nice place to live. And what Evan's talking about is, you know, mindset classes, entrepreneurship classes, podcast availability, free access to books. You know, I'm going to teach them Airbnb, you know, stuff like that. And what you're doing, right? I always go back to Extreme Home Makeover, right? I love that show. You can't watch that show and not cry, right? And one of the things I liked best was I didn't even care about the house. It was when they would give the kids of the family college for free. And I always stuck with the fact that changes the generations. That doesn't change the moment, right? And what you're looking to do is you're looking to change generations for a long period of time. And that's where you really are making that social impact that really moves the needle, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way of putting it. Is, you know, we families that have stayed on a flatline trajectory or even a downward trajectory, and we want to say, hey, let's turn that arrow up and let's point it up and say, hey, let's help this family grow and become all that they can be and become the best version of themselves.
100%. You know, I interviewed my coach yesterday, who's a recovery specialist, 18 years, and I made a point to him that was very interesting, you know, and I said, you know, in the moment when you're recording a podcast, you're thinking that you're just talking to your guest, and yet his podcast has reached 2 million people. And that's 2 million lives that got affected. Well, how many of those 2 million lives got their friends better, right? And so this is what the ripple effect of social impact investing is, guys. This is the investing that I want to do. It's the reason I teach people Airbnb, because it's a low entry point. Maybe they can leave their job earlier. Maybe they can do that. And, you know, and so by getting with these governments and getting with these cities, you know, we're towns like Nashville, Austin, San Antonio, LA, you know, these towns that are so expensive to live in, you know, as a waiter, if she's a single mom, you know, with 3 kids, we're just hoping, you know, the basic needs are met. A nice place to live where there's not crime, you know, and if you walk these units, you would understand that these are, I keep harping on this, but these are nice apartments. You know, these are market grade apartments. But I kind of want to switch gears for a minute, because it's something we talk about a lot. You know, you do a lot of reading, you do a lot of inner work, but I really feel like your life's changed since you got a coach. And kind of walk us through, you know, I know you were hesitant maybe at first, and I don't really need that, but I see what it's spurred in you, and I agree too. I feel the same way, and just kind of go down that road.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's amazing when you have somebody, if you think about it, it's some powerful person in your corner helping push you forward and helping you get your greatest goals and your biggest goals and your scariest goals, and helping you get there and get further faster. I think if you look at any, you know, I'm sure your listeners have heard, like if you look at any athlete, any top performer, even in business, like a lot of top business leaders of Fortune 100 companies have a coach. But like you said, I mean, when I first got into it, I learned about coaching. I was like, yeah, that's great, but I'm already driven. I'm already pretty successful. Like I don't need that. And, it seems like a silly investment. But I just started seeing all these people around me that I look up to that were crushing it. And they all had something in common, is that they all had a coach. And so I started asking around, and I found a guy has been coaching people and made tremendous impact on others. And so once I started working with him, it was just night and day shift. Like literally, that's partially why I became a coach, because I'm like, I want to do that for other people. Like that is really cool. Mm-hmm. Because it was just night and day the way I thought about myself, my atmosphere, my mindset. I was already pretty positive, but that just took it to a whole nother level where I was like, hey, I can actually make massive change in my world and the world of others. And I'm thinking too small, and I can go even bigger.
Sure.
And I can do it a lot quicker than I thought I could. So I think that just like that accountability, that holding my feet to the fire, that belief in myself, that extra level of confidence, that kind of second eyes and ears for different like problems or kind of like forks in the road that I'm going through. Because we all go through ups and downs, but think about like if you had somebody in your corner to bounce ideas off of or keep you accountable toward things that maybe on your own you're going to slide or let slide or not accomplish in any sort of time frame. It's just so powerful. So I highly recommend it to all of your listeners, 100%.
And I think at the end of the day, because we've moved pretty quick, I think they're the ultimate BS detectors. I think that your friends, I'm not talking about your real estate investor friends, but your normal friends will let you slide with a lot of your comments, or I might do that, I'm not going to do that. But when you're having that one-on-one relationship, he's basically a mirror telling you like, hey, dude,
yeah,
it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, exactly right. And the thing is, like, you get out of a coach what you put into a coach. So like what I tell my clients in coaching and what you got to play it all out, and you got to put it all on the table and share everything with me, because I can only help you as much as you share with me and show me where you're coming from and your mindset of how you're viewing problems and what problems you are going through. So the more you share with them, the more they can keep you accountable. Because let's be honest, we don't tell our friends everything about what's going on in our head and our minds and problems we're facing. We keep that to ourselves, a lot of it at least. Mm-hmm. And so I think a coach allows you to basically air your problems or whatever you're going through that you need to break through. So the more you're open about it, the more you can actually break through it.
Yeah. And guys, the true, and I believe this wholeheartedly, when you decide to bring problems out of the shadows and you shine a light on them, they don't control you anymore. It's the single greatest thing that has changed my life. I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be. But when you're open and vulnerable and you decide to make choices, you can really tap into a superpower that can't be touched. But, like, what do you do? I mean, you've got businesses you're running, you got investors. What do you do for yourself? Like, what do you and your fiance do for fun? I mean, I know it's a lot of real estate with us all the time, but there's got to be fun. I think something that you've tapped into, I've noticed, and I've done it with you once, is really the hiking on the weekends, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as what we do outside of real estate, honestly, real estate takes up a lot of my time. It's real estate, personal development, spending quality time with Jeanette, my fiance. And I think part of that you touched on is getting recentered every week and trying to get out in nature and go hiking. We started doing this a couple of years ago. We try to go every week. And it's just, it changes your mindset about things. It gets you closer to nature. Nature has this like meditative effect on you. Even if you don't realize it, like being out in trees and nature and hearing the birds and like hearing the branches crunch underneath your feet, like that has an effect on your brain, and it kind of calms you down. also gives us a space to like think about the week ahead and what we want to accomplish and our why. On top of that, we love hanging out with friends and like playing board games. We love exploring new cities, and even above and beyond that, like we love like looking at new potential businesses. Like that's a fun thing to do, you know, just saying, okay, well, if we were to do this business idea, how would we do it? And let's just kind of have some fun and playing that out.
If so, we're right now in the middle. We're right in the middle of, you know, kind of, a change in the economy and everything. What's the one piece of advice you would give to a new investor if they're looking to start now, or they're looking, you know, I hear from a lot of guys, well, I don't know, am I going to wholesale? Am I going to Airbnb? Am I going to multi? You know, there's just so many things. What's the little piece of advice you would give to them to get started?
I would say get clear. It goes back to that vivid vision. Get clear on what you want and why you want it. I would say if you're getting started and you don't have a lot of capital, or you're switching or you're transitioning, find something where you don't need a lot of capital. I would say I don't know a bunch about wholesaling, but from what I've been told, that seems like a good place to start if you don't have capital. The other thing is multifamily investing, or finding a niche within multifamily investing to basically like input yourself in the puzzle, right? Like if you think about multifamily investing, there's like 4 or 5 different ways to add value, main ways to add value. It's like finding deals, negotiating deals, doing due diligence, putting up capital, and closing and then managing a deal. So if you can find a way where you can find deals, or you can help underwrite deals for an operator, there's ways where you can insert yourself into the puzzle without doing the entire thing. And I wouldn't even recommend that for anybody getting started. But just learn one piece of the puzzle. Capital raising, for example. There's tremendous value to get involved in deals just by knowing people with money. That's all you have to do, is just be able to share the opportunity with people you know with capital. And by raising that capital, you can be included on the ownership and even gain some of the fees, the developer fees or the acquisition fees for raising that capital. So you don't need to learn every single part of the development. You don't have to source the deal. You just have to have the capital or access to it. So I would say get clear on what you like doing, get clear on why you're doing it, and then focus on just that portion of it.
Okay. And you've got a podcast, you're a coach, you've got so many resources. How do people get a hold of you if they're looking for you, some coaching, podcasts? You've got a great podcast. How do they get a hold of all that stuff?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Podcast is Monumental Podcast. Anywhere where you listen to podcasts, where you're listening to Austin's podcast right now. And then also on the investing side, like Austin talked about, we're really driven by impact investing. So our investors have that in mind, and that's really important and a core value to them. So if you're interested in that, it's holidayventures.com. And then as well, the coaching is at evanholiday.com.
Okay. Guys, I want to thank y'all for listening to Construct Your Life. We're looking to build a lifestyle, not a bank account. So if you like this episode, be sure to rate and review us and share with your friends. And y'all have a great day today, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Evan.
Yes, I love it. Thanks for having me, man.
You got it.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.